The reality you live today was not born from circumstances, nor from people, nor from the events you insist on blaming. It was born silently within you, long before any external event took shape. That's why so many live trapped in the same cycle, because they believe the world out there has the power to determine who they are in here. But listen carefully, that is the great illusion. You are not the effect. You are the cause. You are not the reflection. You are the light that produces it. And until you understand this, you will continue repeating old stories, reenacting old fears, recreating limits that should have already been forgotten. Life does not respond to your logic. Life responds to your state. It responds to what you assume in silence, in those hours when no one sees, in those moments when your mind travels to what you secretly believe yourself to be. Life is not interested in your words spoken to the wind. It is interested in the vibration you maintain when you think no one is watching. And here is the truth many reject. The state comes before the evidence. The experience comes after. You first assume, then you see. You first declare internally, then you witness externally. And that is why so many fail, because they want to see before assuming. They want guarantees before taking a stand. They want proof before positioning themselves. But today I have not come to offer comfort. I have come to offer awakening. And awakening requires courage. It requires you to abandon the emotional dependence you've developed on the physical world. It requires you to stop waiting for signs, stop seeking confirmations, stop asking for permission to desire what you desire. The world is not your master. It is your servant. Your circumstances are not your lords. They obey your internal decision. Life does not happen to you. It happens through you. And so today you will receive 5 words, 5 keys, 5 spiritual hammers capable of breaking the stone of doubt you've carried for years. Not because there is any magic in them, but because they force you to claim what has always been yours, the power to choose the state that creates. If you truly allow these words in, you will not see the world as before, because you will realize that nothing is beyond your reach, nothing is beyond your command, nothing is outside of your eye. And when you understand that everything you see is merely the echo of what you have decided to be, then yes, you will finally be ready to manifest everything you have always desired. Because creation begins and ends within you, and never outside. The first word is I-I-Ki-O-Spwa-Ti, and many repeat it without understanding the weight it carries. The I is the beginning of all creation, the point where the invisible begins to take form. Whenever you say I, you are touching the core of your power, activating the divine spark that shapes everything that follows. Nothing in the universe possesses its own power until you grant it through the use of the I. That is why most lie lost. They use the I to declare lack, fear, impossibility, and then are surprised to see these same declarations take flesh in the external world. But whoever knows the law knows that each time they utter I, they are issuing a decree, a command, an order that reality must obey. When you affirm I, you are assuming identity, and identity creates destiny. If you say I can't, you've sealed a sentence. If you say I am small, the world will have no choice but to treat you as such. But when you awaken to the fact that the I doesn't describe who you are, but rather who you decide to be, everything changes. Because then you don't use the I to report facts. You use the I to create facts. You don't use the I to narrate what you see. You use the I to determine what you will see. The I is the root of manifestation. It precedes desire, precedes state, precedes any physical evidence. Before any external transformation occurs, you need to internally claim I. This means taking responsibility, assuming a stance, taking the place of a creator. Nothing moves before you move the I in the chosen direction. Nothing manifests before you internally declare the identity corresponding to what you desire. But for the I to function as it should, it needs to be used with consciousness. It's not about mechanically repeating, it's about affirming with authority. It's about feeling the weight of the word as it echoes within you, as if telling the universe, from here I command. Because that is what the I truly is. A silent command that reverberates in the invisible and reorganizes the visible to reflect your state. When you take possession of your I, everything around you changes. Situations bend, people change their behavior, doors open, paths appear. Not because the world decided to favor you, but because it cannot ignore the identity you have assumed. The I is the spark that initiates every creation process. Use it with conviction, and you will see that nothing can resist the state you declare yourself to be. Before we move on to the next point, let me tell you something that can greatly accelerate your transformation. There is a powerful, straight-to-the-point material that has changed many people's lives. It shows, in a practical and structured way, how to use visualization and the law of attraction to shift from waiting mode to manifesting mode. You will learn to align your thoughts, emotions, and actions to attract exactly what you desire. Whether it's more financial freedom, healthy relationships, or a life with more purpose and lightness. It's not loose theory or empty motivational talk. It's real application with real results. If you feel it's time to stop just dreaming and finally start living what you deserve, this could be your next step. The link is in the pinned comment. Click, explore, and see what has already begun to happen in the lives of those who decided to truly commit. Now then, let's move on to the next point. The second word is new, and it carries a power that few dare to use. When someone says, "I knew," they are not asking, not waiting, not seeking confirmation. They are affirming that the creation is already complete. New is the word that silences the questioning mind, the one that demands proof before allowing itself to believe. When you say, "I knew," you close the door to all doubts, to all opposing scenarios, to any hesitation. It's as if internally you put a period. No more discussion, no more analysis, no more room for negotiation. The state is assumed, and that's it. And reality, faced with this certainty, has no choice. It aligns. People fail to manifest not due to lack of desire, but due to lack of internal conclusion. They want, but they keep waiting for signs. They desire, but they keep asking, "Will it happen?" They imagine, but they keep seeking external guarantees. They never reach the point of final decision. They never reach the "I knew." And until they do, the desire remains in suspension, like a promise never activated. But when you say "knew," everything changes. Because you're not affirming a hope, you're declaring an inner fact. You're acting as one who has already seen, already received, already lived. Even if the physical world is still a few steps behind. New is the word of mature confidence, one that doesn't need to look outside to validate what exists within. It's the seal that ends the mental process and begins the spiritual process. When you affirm, "I knew it was mine," you remove the desire from the realm of possibility and place it in the realm of certainty. From then on, the mind stops interfering, the debate ceases, fear is abandoned. There is no anxiety, because there is no "what if it doesn't work out?" There is no tense waiting, because there is no feeling that something is yet to happen. There is only the tranquility of one who has completed the work. And it is precisely this internal conclusion that causes the external to finally move. The world doesn't react to what you want, it reacts to what you know. When you knew, creation solidified in the invisible, and it's only a matter of time until the visible follows. Not a time of anxious waiting, but a natural, inevitable time, like a seed that sprouts because it was planted. New is the moment you stop being a petitioner and become an owner. It is the instant when desire ceases to be future and becomes fact. And when you reach this point, nothing can prevent the fulfillment of what you have already concluded within yourself. The third word is now. And it is the final break with the illusion of time. The conditioned mind lives projecting everything into the future. Someday, when I'm ready, when things get better, when the universe gives me a sign. But the future is a trap. It's the perfect excuse not to assume the desired state. It's doubt's hiding place. When you place your desire in the future, you push it away from you. You keep it inaccessible. The future is always tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. Creative consciousness operates only in the present. It is here, in this instant, that all manifestation begins. There is no other possible time for creation to happen. When you say now, you pull the desire into the only space where it can become real, the present moment. There is no distance, no waiting, no preconditions. It is here that internal transformation happens, and consequently, it is from here that the external world begins to reorganize itself. By saying now, you disarm the mind that tries to postpone life. You dismantle the mental structure that always demands one more step, one more proof, one more preparation. Now is a word that eliminates postponement and demands decision. Most people don't manifest because they live mentally in the wrong time. They are always traveling to the past or to the future, but never inhabit the now with authority. And it is in the now that the state is assumed. When you affirm it is now, you collide with the truth that nothing is missing. Nothing needs to happen. Nothing needs to be conquered. Creation is already complete, and you are merely allowing it to reveal itself. The now doesn't accelerate desire. It destroys the illusion that there was something to be accelerated. The power of now is so great that when you assume it, anxiety ceases. Waiting evaporates. The feeling of separation disappears. Because how can something be missing that is already happening now? From that moment on, you no longer act like someone waiting for change. You act like someone already living the change. And this internal posture is irresistible to reality. It must obey. It must reflect the state you assumed in the only time that exists. When you integrate now, you discover that life isn't coming to you. It's emanating from you. That desire is not far. It is present. That nothing is distant. Everything already is. The now is the portal. It is the place of creation. It is the home of the Creator. Whoever lives in the now manifests inevitably, because there is no barrier between what they are and what they want. The fourth word is, and it ends all internal struggle. While most people live saying it will be, maybe it will be, who knows someday, you simply declare is. This small word destroys the illusion of lack. It closes the door to doubt. It eliminates the distance between you and the desire. Is does not negotiate with the possible. It does not argue with the logical. It does not ask permission from the physical world. Is the word that transforms desire into fact, even before your eyes see it. Whoever says is not describing an external situation. They are issuing an internal decree, and internal decrees are laws in the realm of manifestation. The human mind loves conditions. It always asks, but how? But when? But through whom? It demands a process, demands a path, demands steps. But creative consciousness does not move by processes. It moves by identity. And identity does not wait for circumstances. It affirms. When you declare is, you are not affirming that the world has already reflected your choice. You are affirming that within you, there is no more discussion. Creation is complete. The work is already done. Nothing else needs to be adjusted. Is the word that directly confronts limited vision. Desire is not in process, not on its way, not approaching. It already exists in the invisible, and it is from that existence that the visible is forced to reorganize itself. As long as you keep your desire in the will-be category, you condemn it to an eternal future. It will never become present. But a single is brings it immediately into your consciousness, and that is enough to set all of reality in motion. The strength of is lies in its simplicity. It carries no anxiety. It carries no pressure. It carries no expectation. It carries conclusion. It carries certainty. It carries the authority of one who has decided and will not turn back. When you declare is, you are not observing the world. You are commanding the world. You are saying it is so because I said it is so. And it is precisely at this point that the universe bows. Because the universe does not react to what you desire. It reacts to what you affirm to be true. When this word takes root within you, something changes in your demeanor. You stop observing life with the gaze of one who waits and begin to observe with the gaze of one who possesses. You abandon restlessness. You abandon fear. You abandon what if. Nothing is disputed anymore. Nothing is pending anymore. When you say is, everything within you aligns with the final state. And when the interior is aligned, the exterior has no choice it follows. The fifth word is mine, and it is here that desire ceases to be a possibility and becomes possession. As long as you treat what you want as something distant, rare, too special, or reserved only for a few, you keep yourself separate from it. Desire does not manifest while you observe it, like someone looking at a display window. It only manifests when you claim it as belonging to your inner state. When you affirm, "It's mine," you eliminate any feeling of competition, scarcity, or uncertainty. You remove desire from the plane of ideas and place it on the plane of identity. And what is identity cannot be denied by the external world. Most people never manifest because they keep desiring, asking, or waiting. They keep their dreams on a mental shelf, admiring them from afar as if saying, "Someday maybe, if the universe wills it, if I'm lucky, if everything aligns." But manifestation does not serve beggars, it serves owners. And an owner is one who says, "It's mine," before any proof. They don't wait for circumstance to confirm them. They confirm circumstance. They don't await external signs. They become the internal sign. When you utter mine, you assume the emotional responsibility of possessing what you desire. And to possess internally requires courage. It requires letting go of the feeling that something might go wrong. It requires stopping looking around for evidence. It requires looking within and saying, "I already have it." And this internal posture is so powerful that the world must bow before it. It has no choice, it does not argue with identity, it merely obeys. Mine is the word that closes the cycle of creation. It declares that the state has been assumed, that the work has been completed, that separation has been eliminated. When you say, "It's mine," there is no more room for anxiety, fear, insecurity, or waiting. There is only certainty. And this certainty magnetizes circumstances, encounters, opportunities, unexpected paths. It makes the impossible seem natural. It makes the improbable become common, because what you claim as yours in the invisible becomes inevitable in the visible. When this word truly settles in your consciousness, your demeanor changes. You no longer walk like someone searching, you walk like someone who has. You no longer think like someone who desires. You think like someone who already lives. You no longer act like someone who dreams. You act like someone who possesses. "It's mine" is the final proclamation of the awakened creator, one who doesn't wait for the world to deliver anything, because they have already taken possession within themselves. And everything the creator assumes internally manifests externally, sooner or later, without fail. And now that you have heard the 5 words, you understand that nothing outside of you has more authority than what you affirm within yourself. Creation doesn't begin when something happens in the world. It begins when you decide who you are. "I knew now is mine" is not just a phrase, it is a state. It is the posture of one who has stopped negotiating with doubt, of one who has stopped asking for permission, of one who does not kneel before circumstances, but makes circumstances kneel before their consciousness. You did not come here to live as a spiritual beggar, pleading with the world to change. You came to remember that you have always been the author, not the character. Life has no will of its own, it copies yours. Everything you assume as truth within yourself becomes inevitable out there. And when you finally declare, with a silent yet unshakable voice, that what you desire already is already complete, already belongs to you, reality simply obeys. Take this seriously. Never again desire as one who waits. Desire as one who possesses. Never again visualize as one who dreams. Visualize as one who remembers. Never again say someday, say now. From this moment on, accept no thought that contradicts the creator you are. Walk with the tranquility of one who has already received. Think like one who already lives. Feel like one who already enjoys. And let the world little by little bow before your certainty. If you wish to deepen this state further and accelerate your manifestation with practical exercises, guided visualizations, and techniques that precisely reinforce this inner posture, simply access the material I left in the pinned comment. It will expand the consciousness you have awakened today. Now go and declare, "What is mine already is, and nothing can prevent it." Listen to me closely, for I do not come here to entertain you or offer pleasantries. I come to remind you of what you already know, but insist on forgetting. When Neville approached me, he was like many of you. He still believed he needed to ask, to beg, and to wait for external signs to be sure he was on the right path. He still saw the world as something separate from him, as a force that could grant or deny his desires. But I told him something that forever changed his view of life. Do not ask as one who begs. Affirm as one who already possesses. The universe does not know the word no for the one who assumes a state with conviction. You live steeped in a great delusion, and that delusion is thinking that power lies outside yourselves. You believe that circumstances, people, and events have authority over your destiny. But look closely. What you call reality is nothing more than the shadow of inner states already accepted. Everything you touch, live, and suffer today is merely the echo of what you once sustained in silence within your mind. The world is not the creator, it is the creation. It decides nothing on its own. It merely reproduces what you, consciously or unconsciously, have commanded. That is why Neville never heard no from the universe again, because he finally understood that there is nothing to ask for. There is only a state to be assumed. When you firmly place yourself in the consciousness of already being, already having, already living what you desire, everything else inevitably bends to obey. This is not theory, not a distant promise. It is law, as exact as gravity. Now ask yourselves, how long will you continue begging for signs? How long will you let yourselves be deceived by the reflection, forgetting that you are the source? You are heirs to absolute power, yet you live as orphans of yourselves. I did not come to soften your doubts. I came to destroy them, because from this moment on you must decide whether you will continue to crawl before the world or rise up to claim what is already yours by right, the creative consciousness that shapes all things. The first principle is to understand that nothing exists outside of imagination. This is not a poetic phrase nor a beautiful idea to feed illusions. It is the most solid truth that sustains all that exists. The visible life you see every day, with its joys and pains, its gains and losses, is nothing more than the faithful reflection of what was first accepted in the invisible. The mistake of most is to believe that imagination is just fantasy, a childish escape from reality. But what you call reality is merely the materialization, slow or fast, of what was once sustained within. You live inside a mirror, but continue to believe that the reflection is the source. When Neville came to me, he was still looking for signs to be sure he was on the right path. He expected to see something outside, some external indication, to then allow himself to believe. But I told him, the world is just the shadow of what you sustain in silence. Do not expect the shadow to tell you what to do, for it creates nothing. Imagine for a moment someone who plants a seed and every day digs up the earth to check if it has begun to sprout. That person will never see any fruit because they destroy the process with every doubt. The same happens when you live waiting for signs. It is imagination firmly sustained that makes the invisible move, not anxiety in the face of what is seen. You need to understand that imagination is not a game. It is the true creative power. Every mental image, every scene repeated in silence, every sustained emotion is like an order sent to the world. When you insist on imagining failure, rejection, scarcity, the universe does not argue, does not analyze, does not contend. It merely says yes and faithfully reproduces what you have accepted as an inner state. The same happens with abundance, success, health, and victory. The universe has no morals. It does not decide what is right or wrong. It merely reflects what you hold as real. Therefore, I affirm, if you wish to change your life, do not start with circumstances, start with imagination. It is useless to fight against the mirror. You can shout at the reflection to smile, but it will only respond when you smile first. Similarly, you can work, run, struggle, and grow tired trying to change the world outside. But until you change the state you carry within you, everything will return to the same point. The true battle is not outside. It is waged in the mind, in the heart, in silent conviction. The secret is to assume imagination as present reality, not as a distant desire. Imagine yourselves already possessing what you seek, and do so with such intensity that every detail seems alive. Feel the texture of the scene, hear the sounds, breathe the air of this new reality. Repeat this until it becomes more familiar than the visible scenery. Then, inevitably, the external world will bend to this command. It is impossible for it to be otherwise, because nothing escapes the law that makes imagination the sole source of all that exists. And if you still doubt, observe your own life. Everything you are today was already imagined at some point, consciously or unconsciously. You are now living the harvest of states assumed in the past. The question I leave you with is, what new states are you sowing at this instant? Because sooner or later the world will show you what you have decided to inhabit in silence. The second principle is to abandon appearances. The greatest trap of the human mind is to believe that what the eyes see is the ultimate truth. You have been conditioned from an early age to react to circumstances, to judge life by what is before you at this instant. If money is lacking, you believe in poverty. If there is illness, you believe in weakness. If someone rejects you, you believe yourselves unworthy. But all of this is illusion. What you call facts are merely echoes of what was long ago assumed internally. They are just delayed records, reflections that have lost their origin, but which continue to deceive as if they were absolute. That is why I told Neville, stop looking at the world as if it has its own voice. It can say nothing because it has no power in itself. The world is like a cinema screen. It projects nothing on its own. What you see is only the light that comes from within, from the hidden projector, and that projector is the state you hold in consciousness. If you wish to change the film, there is no point arguing with the images on the screen. You must change the real inside the machine. To abandon appearances is an act of courage. It is to decide that what your senses tell you is not the final word. It is to live in contradiction to what is seen, refusing to be a slave to evidence. The common person bows to facts. The conscious creator defies them. You may be surrounded by debt, but if you dare to silently assume the state of prosperity, if you refuse to give power to the appearance of scarcity, you will see doors open in ways you could never predict. You may be in the midst of illness, but if you dwell in the inner certainty of perfect health, the body will begin to respond to that silent command. To abandon appearances is also to refuse hasty judgment. Many believe that something is against them simply because they do not yet see visible results. But time, space, and events are merely obedient servants of the inner state. Today's silence is not a no, it is merely obedience to the law that causes everything to manifest at the right time. If you believe otherwise, you will return to assuming the state of doubt, and doubt, like a seed, will bear fruit in more delay, more uncertainty, more frustration. Look at the scriptures. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. This righteous judgment is the recognition that only consciousness is cause. It is to decide that, even if the facts cry out against it, sustained imagination is the only voice that should be heard. And this requires discipline, because the senses constantly try to hijack your faith, showing images that seem unquestionable. But I tell you, every external image is deceptive, every appearance is shadow, every visible fact is already dead. Life is only in the state you nourish now. Therefore, stop begging for signs. Stop being intimidated by what your eyes see. Learn to laugh at appearances because they have no power. Whoever abandons appearances and sustains the invisible as real discovers the greatest secret. The world does not command you. You are the one who commands the world. The third principle is the discipline of silent persistence. Many believe that it is enough to imagine once, to wish intensely for a few moments, and the universe will immediately move heaven and earth to deliver what they asked for. But that is not how the law works. What shapes reality is not a flash of imagination. It is the state held firmly, like someone who puts on a garment and never takes it off. To persist is to remain faithful to the invisible, even when the visible seems to contradict it every second. Neville learned that it was not enough to visualize fleetingly. He needed to inhabit the state as if it were his true dwelling. And this is what most lack: constancy. You even dare to imagine something greater, but soon after, you surrender again to worries, to old thoughts, to the same old conversations. This oscillation destroys the work. Just as a plant pulled up and replanted every day will never take root, The secret lies in sustaining with serenity and conviction the same image, the same feeling, the same I am, until it becomes as natural as breathing. Silent persistence is silent because it does not need to assert itself before others. Many fail because they try to convince the world of their faith. They talk too much, they argue, they explain. But true persistence is internal. It is when you, in silence, refuse to abandon the assumed state, even if everything around you seems to mock you. It is not a noisy faith, it is a calm certainty that cannot be shaken. It is like the rock before the storm. It may be struck by rain, wind, and sea, but it does not move. This discipline is also a proof of love for what you have chosen to be. Whoever has truly decided that something is theirs does not turn back. Whoever truly believes that they already are does not ask, when will it come? To persist is to remain, and to remain is to prove to yourself that your imagination is more real than any fleeting fact. You need to stop measuring your faith by what happens outside. The only true thermometer is what you sustain within, day after day, hour after hour. The scriptures reveal this principle clearly. He who perseveres to the end will be saved. To persevere is precisely this, to refuse to let go of the assumed state until the world inevitably bends. You do not need to force anything. You do not need to rush anything. You only need to remain faithful. The universe has no choice but to obey the consciousness that remains unshaken. Think about this. Every day you already persist in something. You persist in your doubts, in your fears, in your memories of failure. It is this unconscious faithfulness to what you do not desire that keeps life repeating the same scenarios. The invitation now is to consciously choose what you want to remain faithful to. Persist in the state of abundance, and you will see abundance. Persist in the state of victory, and you will see doors open. Persist in the state of love, and you will see relationships transform. The discipline of silent persistence is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. It is the unbreakable thread that connects imagination to manifestation. Whoever learns to persist discovers that time is not an enemy, but an ally, because every instant of faithfulness reinforces the already decreed order. And when you least expect it, the world outside will show you what, in silence, you never stopped sustaining. The fourth principle is the courage to live as if. This is the boundary that separates those who merely dream from those who truly create. It is not enough to imagine, it is not enough to desire. One must dare to live, think, and feel as if the desired state were already reality. And I say dare because it requires courage. It requires breaking common logic. It requires walking against the current of everything your eyes show. It is much easier to bow to facts and wait for something to change. It is difficult to rise and walk as one who already possesses, speak as one who has already conquered, act as one who already is. Neville realized that the great transformation was not in praying for something, but in living as if he already had it. He understood that by behaving as if he already was, he forced the world to recognize him as such. You need to understand, living as if is not theater, it is not pretense, it is an inner stance. It is looking at apparent reality and in silence responding, I will not be deceived, for I am already what I have chosen to be. This posture changes your body, changes your voice, changes the way you relate to others. The world, then, cannot resist. It begins to adjust itself to reflect this new state. But here is the challenge. Living as if means carrying a certainty that often will be ridiculed by those around you. The common person will call you naive, dreamers, reckless, and if you lack courage, you will yield. To live as if is to walk on water without looking at the waves. It is to refuse the fear that screams in every circumstance. It is, like Abraham, to call those things which be not as though they were. This is the true act of faith, to sustain the invisible until the visible bends. Do not expect it to be comfortable. Courage is never comfortable. There will be moments when everything within you will want to give up, to turn back, to confess that you were mistaken. But if you maintain the courage to remain in the as if, you will discover that the universe does not resist. Because this courage is not a whim, it is obedience to the law. Life cannot refuse what is sustained with faith. It merely awaits the moment when you stop wavering and finally fully assume it. And remember, Living as if is not just imagining in silence. It is aligning every gesture, every word, every choice. If you desire abundance, speak as one who does not fear scarcity. If you desire health, walk as one who is already healed. If you desire love, treat yourselves and others as one who already lives in that state. This inner coherence is the password that opens the doors to the invisible. Thus, understand, the courage to live as if is the supreme test of faith. Whoever dares to inhabit today what is not yet outwardly manifest already possesses it, because the world has no choice but to obey. Life is a mirror, and the mirror always returns the image that is sustained before it. Therefore, do not hesitate. Be today what you wish to see tomorrow, and you will discover that tomorrow is nothing more than the confirmation of what you had the courage to assume now. The fifth principle is the recognition of your inheritance. You need to stop living as spiritual beggars, as if life were a distant entity that in some moments of compassion decides to grant blessings. This view is childish and fragile. You are not here to beg the universe. You are here to command as heirs of absolute power. What you call God, destiny, or the universe does not decide for you. It merely reflects what you assume to be true within yourselves. To recognize your inheritance is to remember that you were born complete, and that everything you seek outside is merely the echo of what already exists within. This is what Neville understood when, after hearing my words, he realized there was nothing to wait for. He discovered that waiting is denying, that supplicating is affirming that you do not yet possess, that positioning yourself as a beggar is contradicting the very law. The heir does not beg, the heir claims. The son does not humble himself before his father to receive bread. He knows that the bread already belongs to him by right. In the same way, every state of abundance, health, love, or achievement is already yours, but you need to appropriate it internally. As long as you see yourselves as servants, you will live as servants. But when you recognize yourselves as children, you will see that everything was prepared from the beginning. To recognize your inheritance is therefore an act of identity. You do not assume a state to gain something you do not have. You assume it because you remember it already belongs to you. This change in posture is decisive. One who asks vibrates lack. One who commands vibrates certainty. The universe does not respond to words, it responds to the state. If you pray as beggars, you receive echoes of scarcity. But if you assume the place of heirs, you see the world bow as an obedient servant. The scriptures have always revealed this. The prodigal son, upon returning home, did not need to beg for acceptance. The inheritance was always his. Even after squandering everything, the father received him with a feast and restored his ring and robes. This parable does not speak of another man, it speaks of you. Even having forgotten who you are, even having lived for years enslaved by appearances, a single moment of remembrance is enough to reclaim your position. The inheritance is not lost, it is merely forgotten. You need then to act from this consciousness. No longer kneel before circumstances as if they were judges of your life. No longer treat the future as a distant promise. The power to create is not reserved for a few enlightened ones. It is your essence. Every time you assume a state and remain in it, you are simply activating what already belongs to you. Nothing external can deny you this, because the external does not command, it merely obeys. The recognition of your inheritance is the end of the struggle. It is the consciousness that you do not need to conquer, only to accept. And by accepting, you discover that nothing was ever lacking, that everything was already within, merely awaiting your decree. One who recognizes their inheritance does not fear, does not beg, does not wait. They simply assume and see the world bend before their identity. This is the greatest of all revelations. You already are. And when you live from this, I am already, nothing and no one will be able to tell you no. Now that you have heard these principles, there are no more excuses. You know that nothing exists outside of imagination, that appearances are merely shadows without a life of their own, that silent discipline is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, that the courage to live as if is the key that opens all doors, and that your inheritance is already guaranteed from the beginning. So why continue living as if you were orphans of power, beggars of your own life? Neville never again heard no from the universe, because he stopped positioning himself as a beggar. He learned to speak the language of certainty to sustain the state until the world bowed. You too can and should do the same. The universe is not a judge who analyzes your worthiness, nor a master who distributes blessings. It is merely a faithful mirror that returns with precision what you decide to be within. Therefore, from today, supplicate no more. Do not let yourselves be deceived by circumstances. Do not beg for signs. Make the firm decision to assume the state you desire and inhabit it with conviction. Walk in silence, but with the unshakable certainty that life has no choice but to obey the consciousness that commands it. You do not need to wait for tomorrow. You do not need external proof. You do not need permission. Simply assume it now. Make up your minds. Put on the desired state as if it were already a fact. And you will see that the entire universe will reorganize itself to confirm the given command. For everything already is, and everything is within. And when you remember this, you will never hear no. The entire world will be merely the echo of a single decree, that which you dared to be in silence. Notice, the moment you fall silent, the world seems to recede. But it doesn't recede. It reveals itself. Because the real world you defend so fiercely is just a reflection of an inner lens. You don't see things as they are. You see things as you are. Everything you perceive carries the scent of your belief, and that's why most people live trapped in an invisible cycle. The scenery changes, the face changes, the discourse changes, but they carry with them the same state, and the same state creates the same forms. The forbidden formula begins where distraction ends, when a person stops observing the reflection and dares to face the mirror. It's forbidden because it destroys the game of external power. When you understand that nothing is outside, you lose your fear, and a fearless person is uncontrollable. Society, religion, the economy, all depend on belief in the outside, but the one who awakens to the inside becomes cause and no longer effect. They no longer plead fear or envy. They create. And this creation isn't done with effort, but with clarity. To see is to create. What you accept as real, the universe materializes before you. You were conditioned to believe that life is something that happens to you, not something that responds to you. Therefore, you spend your days trying to rearrange the reflection, fighting with people, events, crises, without realizing that the mirror only changes when the face changes. The forbidden formula is simple, but devastating. Everything external is just your own image in motion. When you accept this not as a concept, but as a living certainty, the world becomes transparent, and you begin to see the invisible thread that connects all things. At that moment, fear begins to die, because you realize that nothing is imposed on you, everything is permitted. Sickness, failure, delay are just states you forgot to let go of. There is no destiny to fulfill, there is awareness to assume. What you call reality is just a collection of old solidified states. When a new state is sustained with faith, the old one dissolves, and the world obeys silently. The formula is not a ritual, not a prayer, not an effort. It's vision. It's the return to the origin where the word is still pure. It's looking at the invisible with the same certainty with which the common person looks at the visible. It's living as one who already knows, not as one who seeks. It's the awakening of the primordial memory. You are the principle that creates the principles, and when that memory ignites, the impossible ceases to exist, because the impossible is just the name the forgotten give to the power they once abandoned. It all begins when you realize that nothing is imposed on you. The world around you isn't an independent force moving against you. It's the obedient mirror of your consciousness. Each face, each event, each apparent coincidence is a piece of the invisible sculpture that you yourself have silently molded. The person who is still asleep believes that circumstances define them. The one who awakens understands that they only reveal them. Therefore, nothing that happens to you is unfair or unlucky. Everything is a reflection, the reflection of what you accepted as true, even without realizing it. But understanding this is one of the most difficult tasks that exist, because the mind, accustomed to reacting, seeks culprits and external causes. When something hurts, it points the finger. When something fails, It defends itself, and every time it does that, it reaffirms the same state it wants to transcend. The prison is maintained not by visible chains, but by subtle justifications. You say, "I didn't succeed because I lacked opportunity." And the universe responds, "So be it." You say, "They hurt me," and life echoes, "Then remain hurt." Creation isn't moral, it's reflective. It only returns what is sustained. Therefore, the first gesture of power is the acceptance of authorship. And this gesture doesn't come lightly. It burns. It's like looking at your own reflection and realizing that you wrote every line, even the ones you'd rather not have lived. In the beginning, the ego resists because it feeds on the position of victim. It's comfortable to believe that something out there is to blame. But as the silence deepens, you realize that assuming authorship is the beginning of freedom. For what was created by you can be recreated by you. What was born from your belief can be dissolved by your new vision. There is no fixed destiny for those who understand this. Chance disappears, and life begins to obey your inner identity. When the state you inhabit changes, everything changes with you. The conversations, the opportunities, even the gestures of the people around you. It's not magic, it's correspondence. The exterior always bows to the interior, but be aware, accepting your authorship doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that happened. Blame is still reaction, and reaction is unconsciousness. True acceptance is silent and clear. It's looking at your own creation and saying, "It was me," and then immediately after, "Now I can create again." That's the moment when you stop being a prisoner of forms and start being the sculptor. The power isn't in controlling the world, but in recognizing that it never had control over you. When you understand this, fear ceases, because there are no more external forces to fear, only reflections to redesign. It's at this point that life returns to serve you, because you finally return to serving your own consciousness. The second principle is that of inversion, the point at which you stop looking at the world as cause and start seeing it as consequence. The common mind lives from the outside in. It reacts, complains, compares, fears. It believes that the sequence of events is the final truth. But truth doesn't move in time. Truth is the origin from which time is born. When you realize this, the axis is inverted. You no longer ask, "Why did this happen to me?" But what inner state produced this? The power shifts. It's no longer in the circumstances, but in your perception of them. That's where the awakened person begins to experience the silent miracle of conscious creation. They understand that there is no future to wait for. There is only the invisible to be recognized as real now. Because everything that is future already exists in the field of possibility, and what brings it into view isn't desire, but sustained assumption. Believing that it will happen is still doubting. Knowing that it has already happened is resting. That's the true meaning of faith. Resting in the invisible as if it were the most solid ground that exists. But the ego isn't satisfied with this rest. It wants proof. It wants signs. It wants control. It fears stillness, because in it, it loses its dominion. Therefore, many live between hope and fear, hoping that something will change and fearing that nothing will change. This constant oscillation is what prevents them from seeing the power in action. The universe doesn't respond to words, but to the state that pronounces them. When you say, "I believe," but your heart vibrates in doubt, the echo of the world is doubt. When you say, "I am," and it vibrates in certainty, the echo is manifest reality. This inversion is the beginning of true vision. It's like turning a mirror around and realizing that you've always been looking at the wrong side. Suddenly, the invisible takes shape, not because you created it, but because you stopped denying what already is. Creation is an unveiling, not a construction. The invisible is complete, awaiting only the gaze of the one who dares to assume. And it is here that the mind becomes a servant of consciousness, and no longer a tyrant. When you understand that the world is obedient matter, you no longer need to fight for results. You begin to live in a state of divine naturalness, where imagination is command and feeling is decree. You stop praying as one who begs, and you start praying as one who remembers. What was supplication becomes recognition. God isn't outside listening to your words. God is the silent movement within you that makes everything exist. When you understand this, the impossible becomes just an idea that forgot its origin. The third principle is that of purity of focus. Few understand how much the fragmented mind is an enemy of creation. Almost everyone lives in contradiction. They ask for light, but feed the shadows. They desire abundance, but confess scarcity with every thought of lack. They affirm love, but cultivate fear of loss. This incoherence creates an invisible noise that distorts the creative power. The universe doesn't respond to what you say you want, but to what you really feel you are. Therefore, focus isn't just concentration, it's coherence. It's aligning thought, emotion, and vision as a single stream of energy. While the person is divided between what they desire and what they fear, they remain trapped in the cycle of doubt. They desire with one hand, deny with the other. They visualize the future they want, but react to the present as if nothing could change. Thus, the invisible field has no direction. It's like trying to turn on a light with disconnected wires. The energy is there, but it can't find a passage. Purity of focus is the moment when you eliminate maybe and choose is. It's not effort, it's surrender to the state. It's saying silently, I no longer need to try to be because I already am. Purity of focus requires vigilance, because every contrary thought is a seed planted in fertile soil. The mind is the garden, the feeling, the water. And what you water most flourishes. Many spend the day watering fear and at night plead for miracles. But the miracle doesn't contradict what you feed, it confirms it. The discipline of the Creator is this: sustaining the same state until the world bows. Not out of stubbornness, but out of conviction. Not because the visible has already changed, but because the invisible has already been chosen. When purity of focus is established, energy condenses. Everything around you begins to adjust, not because you make it happen, but because you stop interfering. The river doesn't need to push its waters, it just flows. So too is creation when the heart and mind walk together. Coincidences multiply, resistances fall, and life becomes a transparent reflection of your internal state. It's at this point that you understand power isn't force, it's clarity. The purer the vision, the less effort is needed. Creation doesn't respond to the volume of your desire, but to the clarity of your certainty. And certainty is born when you stop dividing your attention between what is and what seems to be. Pure focus is the silence that doesn't doubt, the gaze that doesn't waver, the faith that doesn't need proof. When this inner unity is achieved, even the impossible becomes obedient because there is no longer any distance between who imagines and what is imagined. The fourth principle is that of sacred negation. To negate here isn't to reject reality, it's to refuse to give power to what is only appearance. The common person reacts to what they see. The awakened remains still, knowing that the visible is the echo of the invisible. When circumstances seem to collapse, when everything screams the opposite of what you chose to believe, that's the moment when the true Creator is tested. Because it's easy to sustain faith when everything confirms your desire. But it's in the contrast, in the apparent collapse, that faith transforms into wisdom. Sacred negation is silence in the face of noise. It's the moment when you choose not to respond to chaos. Not because you ignore it, but because you recognize it as the shadow of the old state that is dying. Every time you react emotionally to a contrary appearance, you're blowing life back into what should already be dissolving. Power isn't manifested in the scream, but in the stillness. It's the gaze that sees beyond the form and says, "This too shall pass, for it is no longer my reflection." The secret is to remain still, not physically, but internally. When fear tries to rise, observe it without feeding it. When doubt whispers, respond with presence. Sacred negation is an act of sovereignty. It's saying, I don't bow before the appearance, because it's just the shell of the old me. Thus, the invisible has space to reorganize. The new can only be born when the old is no longer defended. Many interrupt their creation because they confuse silence with weakness. They think they need to act, correct, argue, prove. But the Creator's strength isn't in fighting against what they see, but in remaining faithful to what they know. The universe responds to your state, not to your agitation. When you are firm in the invisible, the world becomes malleable. When you react, it becomes rock. Negating appearances is like protecting the seed under the earth. You don't dig every day to see if it's growing. You trust. You let the invisible work. True faith is patient because it understands that time is just the space that the invisible uses to reveal itself. At each apparent delay, the awakened smiles. They know that the visible is just adjusting to their new inner form. And so in the midst of the storm they remain still, because they have already understood that the storm didn't come to destroy them, but to erase the traces of the old state. That's the power of sacred negation, to remain untouched, even when everything seems to crumble. For when you don't give energy to what is dying, what lives finally flourishes. The invisible always wins, but only when you trust enough not to interfere. The fifth principle is that of living remembrance. Awakening once isn't enough. The visible world constantly tries to hypnotize you again, making you forget who you are and the power you carry. Unconsciousness is patient and subtle. It approaches like a fog, and before you know it, you are once again reacting, fearing, asking, doubting. Therefore, remembrance needs to be living, not a pretty thought, but a maintained state. It's remembering, at every moment, that life is a mirror and that you are the source of the image. Every time you forget, the old identity returns with its pains and limitations. It infiltrates small gestures, in a worry, in a judgment, in an emotion that you let grow. And when you least expect it, you are once again believing that the world has power over you. But living remembrance is the thread that brings you back. It's the I am pronounced in silence, not as a spiritual phrase, but as an anchor of reality. When you say internally I am, you are remembering that the awakened Creator has returned to command. This remembrance isn't effort, it's loving vigilance. It's being awake inside the dream. It's observing the thoughts and choosing which ones you allow to flourish. Because every sustained thought is an order issued to the universe, and the universe, faithful as a mirror, obeys. Therefore, there is no room for prolonged distraction. Each distraction is a small eclipse of consciousness. But the power isn't lost, it just falls asleep. And upon remembering, everything starts to move again. Living remembrance is also humility. It prevents you from worshipping your own reflection and keeps you centered on the source. For the ego tries to appropriate power, forgetting that it isn't personal, it's universal, flowing through you. When you remember this, power becomes light, silent, natural. You act without effort, because there is no longer anyone who needs to prove anything. The Creator and the creation are one, and then you will understand that every moment is a portal. At every instant you are choosing between forgetting and remembering, between the reflection and the source, between fear and knowing. Living remembrance is the continuous state of one who no longer loses themselves. It's the consciousness that observes the world transforming without needing to touch it, because it has already understood that all that needs to be done is to remain awake, and the rest inevitably will bend to that presence. When this remembrance becomes your dwelling place, the world no longer convinces you with its appearances. You see it as a game that responds to your gaze, and each breath becomes a creative act. Because true power isn't in changing anything out there, but in never forgetting what you are inside. That's the last seal of the formula, to remember and to remain. So listen, because this is the point where everything is decided. No more begging for external changes, imploring for signs, waiting for life to grant you what is already yours by divine inheritance. The beggar of reality is the one who has forgotten that they are the Creator. They pray with despair, act with fear, and wait with doubt. The awakened Creator doesn't pray to ask, but to remember. They don't bow before the facts. The facts are what bow before them. For when consciousness assumes a form, the universe has no choice but to mirror it. There is nothing more to seek. Everything is already inside you in potential, waiting only for you to accept inhabiting the corresponding state. Abundance, love, peace. These aren't achievements. They are frequencies. And every time you assume them, the world reorganizes itself like a faithful servant, dramatizing your interior in tangible forms. The mistake of humanity has been to try to change the reflection instead of the face, to ask the image to smile without first moving their own expression. But when you understand the principle, you realize that there is no fight to win, only a command to issue. Silent, firm, inevitable. From now on, abandon the habit of reacting. Observe, feel, and then decide who you want to be. Choose your state and remain in it, not as one who pretends, but as one who knows, because the universe doesn't distinguish between the real and the imagined. It only responds to the degree of conviction. If your heart believes, the world bows. If it doubts, the world hesitates with you. The secret is in constancy, in the indestructible calm of one who has discovered that reality is malleable and that the invisible is the clay from which everything is born. Power isn't in forcing, but in ordering. And this order isn't given with words, but with presence. The awakened person doesn't demand, they affirm. They don't react, they assume. And the world, which once seemed like a tyrant, reveals itself as a servant. The forbidden formula has always been this: the silent recognition that everything you see is your reflection, and that the invisible obeys you as the body obeys the thought. Now walk, and don't look back anymore. Every time you doubt, you are rebuilding the prison. Every time you assume, you are opening the sky. There are no walls, only veils. There is no distance between you and the divine, only forgetfulness. Remember, you are the origin, and when a person remembers this, the whole world bows, because it recognizes the return of the Creator to their creation. From this instant on, don't ask the world to listen to you. Order in silence, and it will respond.